Uh, hey guys, what's up? It's Law coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides with Law. And today there's not too much we're kicking off with. I'm just mentioning it's a little bit weird for me when I start the video because it's always presented in a video form, but it's obviously not really a video. That's not an accurate description of what I'm doing here. But it has a delay. I don't know if it's the recording thing I'm using, so I have to wait a couple seconds. And it's kind of confusing to get used to because whatever setup, I don't know if it's the hardware or it's the software that I'm using. Either way, it's not good. I don't really like it, but I can't really do anything about it. So, yeah, it is what it is, right? There's not too much that can be done. Like I said this morning, I'm actually pretty happy with how everything's turning out. I think everything sounds pretty good. Everything's sounding pretty good. I just don't like I think the noise gate could be a little bit stronger. But here is a question, because I am trying to get some commentary from my brother, but I guess it's kind of silly for me to even ask, because I'm asking as if this is in the present, and it's not going to be in the present. I'm asking somebody, because right now, today's date is March 5th. So I'm asking you guys for feedback. And then, when this uploads on March 5th, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, by the way, your thing's already, it's too strong. We liked mellow a little bit more. And then it's already going to have been, because I'm pretty sure currently what's being uploaded is December 5th or 4th or 6th or something like that. But my guess is December 5th. So that's where we're at in the chronology. I got something going on. There's something up there, you know what I'm saying? So I was thinking about it today. I think even though I'm going to try to be a little bit lighter with things, because we're kind of sick of this heavy, watery stuff. We're not really a huge fan of it. Even though that's something I feel, at the same time, it's kind of, I don't know, simultaneously it's a little bit silly. Does that make sense? You can't force lightheartedness. You can't force humor. It comes naturally. I almost think you could sense a lot about a person's soul based on what their natural composition is. If a person is naturally lighthearted, they could have a shallow soul. Depends on, I guess, the type of humor being executed. If somebody is naturally serious, as I would like to think I am, but if we're being dead honest, I can just be a flip. I can be a switch. Sometimes I feel like people take me seriously. People see me as very serious. Other times I feel like I'm the court jester. So there's not really, what am I? Who am I? What am I supposed to be? I think that's a part of my path here, is trying to figure out how to control that energy, as opposed to letting it just run wild, just letting it be kind of chaotic and all over the place. And if it happens to be this way, then I guess I'm just here in this moment. And then, if I happen to be another way, then I just happen to be like that. It's probably trying to control it. And this routine, it has some natural benefit, but I think there has to be like I've repeated multiple times, a touch more of muscle. And that probably happens automatically. I would assume that if you drew an average, my speaking has improved. Although I still feel like the walk, switch, flaw, those were some interesting times, and I still feel that. I still feel like the walk, switch, flaw were just fire. That was probably my favorite time. And I actually have a feeling it has to do with the environment. Walking while talking as opposed to walking while driving, it's different. Walking while driving. Yeah, because that's what I'm doing. I mean, if you could do that, maybe in the future, that's what we'll do. So you'll get exercise equivalent to how long you've driven. Of course, that that wouldn't make any sense, but I still felt like saying it anyway. Because you'd have to make it proportional and blah, blah, blah. You'd have to calculate, well, how hard is the car working and how much in relative to that would a human work. But then you'd have to calculate, too, maybe you got a car with a V8, it's not gonna be breaking a sweat going 50. But if you got some old car, well, no car's breaking a sweat going 50. That's a bad example. If you got a V8, your car's not going to break a sweat going 90, but if you got, even 90, I feel like any car is going to be able to go. I'm trying to come up with a allegory here, and it's not, I don't even think an allegory, a metaphor. We're all over the place today. You get what I'm trying to say. Like, some cars obviously can handle higher speeds better than others, so it's not a perfect comparison, but that would be pretty cool. If internally within your car, as you were driving, you had to walk or jog or whatever equal to what was going on with the car. And, I think people would drive a little bit more carefully if that was the case. If you had people slamming on the gas and then they had to sprint for 20 seconds, I think people would start to drive a little bit more carefully. There were these instant kind of consequences for actions. It's interesting to think about that. I guess the moral caveats either way, because a more realistic implementation of that would be automatic calculation, everybody's brain chipped, and you just get a micro electrocution. Sorry, I know I shouldn't use that term. Electrocute is a nice term, but that I'm pretty sure it means death. I'm pretty sure. So I'm saying micro electrocution to kind of signify that wouldn't be a true death, but that's still not really something I should be saying. So, but it would be a shock. You would get like the pain that you did to the car, the person would automatically feel. And I think that's something that could actually yield positive outcomes. I think people who would make, again, reckless decisions, like driving in a way that's damaging to the car, flooring it, etc., if they're living in a way that's very trash heavy, if they're not living efficiently, if they're creating a lot of waste, they should kind of have like a tangible punishment for it. Most people, aren't going to feel compelled to do something unless there's a clear reason right in front of them. And so, it's sad that that's the case, but that is the case. Or at least it appears to be. That's what we think. Who knows maybe the truth is more complex than that. It's something that it's difficult to say. It's a difficult thing to calculate. I've talked about before, I'm coming across in a very aggressive way right now. I'm saying yeah, go ahead, boom. But I'm not really trying to be like that. I guess I'm just freeballing ideas because I know, especially when it comes to consequence, some things don't really add up and make any sense. And I think my prime example is in America, you have consequence, it's high stakes when it comes to healthcare or being healthy. It's very expensive. And so you would think because there's a higher stakes, it's riskier, it's costlier. You think more people would be compelled to be healthy, and you would see a correlation with that. Whereas if you compare a country with a public healthcare system where it's likely more affordable, you don't really have to be as stressed out about health. You don't really see the same negative health correlation. Now, there's a lot of differences with that. I mean, Europe has much stricter food regulation, so it is, likely what they're intaking is not as bad. And there's a lot of different, it's kind of hard to do an apples to apples comparison with these concepts, but I think even within America, this is something I was actually thinking about today, is when it comes to, I feel like a lot of older people's mindset is you shouldn't make that much money when you're young because you're just going to waste it on a bunch of junk, versus an old person isn't going to do that, or by the time they're old, they're going to be wiser. Now, this may be true if you're getting to the point where, maybe somebody before they're 30, but once you hit 30, I mean, I don't even know. Chances are you're probably pretty set and in stone in terms of like your brain's pretty developed, all that good stuff. But the whole merit, it kind of falls on its face, because I've mentioned before how when you're young, that's kind of when you need money the most. Like when you're older, you've already had a lot of time to save up. But I guess it's baked into the system that's the idea, is that your teens and 20s are just, you just don't make a lot of money, because if you did, you would blow it on a bunch of nonsense anyway. And then when you get older, you earn it, is the idea. And I assume a lot of people think that makes sense. It could have its merits, but the truth is, yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way I kind of believe that. But I don't know that it really warrants what we see, because it's not like if a younger person has money and they spend it, it's still good for the economy. In a way, it could actually be better for the economy and society than older people who hoard it, right? Because older people hoarding money is not really good for the economy. It's not actually. And now a lot of older people have their money stashed in stocks, which I guess is stimulating to the economy in that sense. It's kind of doing a due diligence in a way. The idea, though, that I want to kind of push back on is that if you gave young people broadly more money, increasing the minimum wage, etc., that this would just result in a bad thing, or more money going into bad hands. I'm not sure. And what I think is interesting is that we don't see it the same way for a midlife crisis. If you have an older guy who's splurging on a Corvette, that's not really seen as a negative thing, even though that is a total waste. I mean, I think it's cool. I'm not trying to judge it, but objectively, it's a waste. It's not. That doesn't do anything good for society. I mean, that money could go towards raising another child or something, right? Or it could have, or, right, you go into these alternatives the money could be used for. But we don't really judge that because it's success. I think a lot of people, when they see success, they don't judge it because they think, oh, well, that person's fine because they... But, that's not really the accurate way to view things. It's not the accurate way to view things. A person being successful, at least the way I see it, of course it has to do with hard work. Of course it has to do with grit. But you also have to be in the right place. You also have to get some luck on your side. It doesn't just happen with zero luck. And there's a lot of people who work very hard and they don't necessarily have as much to show for it as some people who work less and make more or the same. This is kind of some of the things about this world that I think we can correct and we will have the ability to correct, but I don't know that there's really any interest to. If you have a brain chip in everybody and you have surveillance over everything, you could immediately rearrange people and make it so that everybody does an equal workload. But then it gets complicated too, because we obviously have clear and blatant examples of people who have diagnosable neuroatypicality. But you also do just have people that have different energy extents. Some people have more energy than others. Some people are able to work harder than other people. Some people, they just get tired easier. At the end of the day, we all operate on spectrums. I almost don't even know exactly how relevant it is to see neurologically atypical diagnosis as such a black and white thing. I think there are probably people who are undiagnosed who just maybe it's a pretty minor case of it. It doesn't affect them because they're wealthier. Or on the other hand, they're not diagnosed because they were too poor. But I think we all have different behaviors and they fall on a spectrum. It's not black and white like this person has ADHD and this person doesn't. I don't think that is a clear way of looking at it. In my opinion, as not a doctor, because I'm not a doctor, so I'm not a doctor, so I could be saying a bunch of baloney right now, but I'm sure there are people with somewhat of an issue when it comes to attention, or they somewhat follow these traits, but they don't meet the full definition, And so it is important to keep in mind a lot of people fall on a spectrum. So in this equal society, I think the rearranging of things, it would be possible to be way more fair than it is now, because I'm sure how it is now is there are people who are able to handle a lot more, but then they just get lucky and they just get in a situation where things are fine. Because remember, a lot of these factors, they compound, and they compound in very meaningful ways. If a person is more mindful, is more capable, thinks more frequently, over the course of 2 years, they're going to be way ahead of someone who isn't. You cross compare somebody who even just 2 hours, just 1 hour, just 30 minutes. Let's say every day for 30 minutes, you have two people and you compare them side by side. And one person every day for 30 minutes has a pretty deep reflection. They sit in silence. They think about their day. They think about where they're at in life. They reflect and they try to figure out, what's a good idea for me to do? versus somebody who spends that same 30-minute interval just scrolling TikTok. It's not that big of a difference. It's not at first. But if you cross-compare those two same people after 2 years and you look at where each of them have landed, of course, the one person who's using their free time and blowing it could have just got luckier. But in terms of consistency, it's likely that the person can go further. But here's the whole point. I don't think it's as easy as just saying, oh, well, just stay off TikTok. I don't think that's not really feasible, and that's not really the point. We as some people, some of us, we're not able to, like, that's why it's not even a talking down thing. Some people can't resist it. They don't really know what else to do with themselves. And I know some people want to say, oh, no, they just need to buckle down. It's not a big deal. It's not that hard. But I just don't think that's true. I think a lot of us are very lost, and I could tell a person to stay off TikTok. You could tell a person to stay off TikTok. But it's just, for some people, I just don't think they can. I think it's just one of the natures of how this reality is. It's the same thing with anything, really. I mean, we all do things that we know aren't good, but we still are stuck in them, or we still have to do them for whatever reason. We all have our own reasons for our own flaws and problems and addictions that we have. And that's why I think it's really not a grumpy thing. It's a misallocation. Because think about how unfair it is that the person who already has a more mindful mind they end up being able to get so much further ahead. Because, they work a job. I'm trying to think about it. So if we agree everybody's on a spectrum, every stat has a spectrum. You have laziness, you have, intellect, you have thoughtfulness, you have, overall executive function, you have ability to optimize, you have ability to conceive vision, you have ability to act on vision. So some people, I think in my case, what my problem is, I can think of the perfect plan, but I can't really do it. And that is a very annoying stat sheet to be given. Because if anything, if you can act on the perfect plan, you can just mirror other people. And to me, that's more of an advantage. It's a little bit more difficult if you just happen to have the perfect plan, but I have issues putting it into motion. That's just worse. It's not a good situation. It's as you can imagine. Now, you could argue probably what would happen is that the person who's good at execution, who's good at acting on plans or acting on ideas, that person is likely to not need the same degree, or no, they're more likely to not listen. So someone like me, actually, even in cases where it wasn't the right idea, I'm very susceptible to suggestion. I vaguely assume that, other people, if they're older than me or if they're more authoritative, I should listen to them. But what I'm learning as I get older is that a lot of times I do know better than a lot of these people who are telling me things, even if they are an elder. Now, this isn't always the case, but broadly speaking, and I'm not saying this out of arrogance at all. I think I've said it before. I don't really like it. I kind of wish that I could go to someone for advice and I was a little bit more clueless about things, not as aware, and I could just trust another person. And if something goes wrong, I could just, although as I'm saying these words, I don't actually know how much I agree with that or how much sense it makes. And that's only because I'm thinking about it, and really it's almost wishing myself to be less adequate than I am, which is kind of a silly and complicated way of looking at things, especially since I want to be as good as I can be. I obviously would like to be my best self, and I can see my best self, but it's actually putting it into action that is a problem for me. And I guess for a lot of people, this is a sentiment. As I'm thinking about it now, I'm acting as if my case is special, and I don't think it is. I think most people, it's probably easier for them to act than it is for them. I mean, it's easier for them to think or maybe not conceive on their own, but I think it's easier for people to know the right thing to do and then just not do it. And they might not know the precise right thing to do, depending on the circumstance. They might not be able to come up with like a crazy plan like I can, but even if I think we're better at conceiving than doing, broadly speaking. I think we can really, just as a humanity, it's sort of a flaw. And then again, you have cases, like I said, of people who are good at acting, they're good at pulling the trigger, but then they don't really do a whole lot with that. Because what ends up happening is their pride can get to them for good reason. But I was saying yesterday, if you don't question yourself, if you think that you are already good enough, you're not gonna grow. There's no reason to. Why would you change anything if you're already happy? You're not gonna do anything to make you happier, unless that was a real mindset. But it's much more motivating if you feel like you aren't smart. You actually feel more compelled to try to do things to become more smart or to become smarter. I'm not sure what the correct terminology in that instance would be. I'm not sure why I'm getting so quiet all of a sudden for some reason. Anyways, this will be a good gate. Well, I'm not going to remember this timestamp or anything like that, but I was going to say it's a decent chance to see how like quieter talking fares, because I have been trying to talk louder, and I'm actually thinking now I don't really know how good of an idea that is, because it could be overloading the mic, but overall the reason why I'm talking loud is because it should, and I think I even said this with the old mic, with any recording, if your voice is loud, it's going to sound better, because your voice in proximity to the background noise is going to be louder. And so ideally that is what you want. You want your voice to surpass the background. It's kind of the whole idea. It's like totally what you're going for. It's just like the whole thing, right? So I always try to keep that in mind. I try to keep in mind, like, I should be learning to speak with volume, as inevitably it should make things sound better, although it does change some of the tonality. Obviously, some people may prefer me being soft-spoken, and it's possible, too, that my content would be better suited for something soft-spoken. That's possible as well. But in my opinion, I'm always just thinking about how to do things ideal or how to do things best. And that's why I'm down this trajectory of fiddling with the compressor and really trying to juice up my voice and, just doing all that stuff. And that's why I'm trying to talk louder, because a louder voice overall, it's just going to be better. My proximity to my voice is going to overpower the background noise more. So it overall is a good thing to get used to. I think it's good. I always have a loud voice. If I'm being honest, I've always been told that. Everybody says that my voice is too loud. So it's kind of like, also, it's a little bit of an in your face to all those people. Shout out to who's ever watching right now, Mom. Shout out shout out to who's ever watching, Mom. Shout out to who's ever watching, sister. You know what I'm saying? These people in my life tell me my voice is too loud, and then watch me have this amazing life because of my voice. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Because it's not the only person. And as I've gotten trouble in before when I'm happy about something and I'm loud, everybody's been on me about that. But there's a gift to that. There's a gift to a natural loud voice. And I see what that is now. It's being able to speak. It's being able to record these things well. And like I said, I may be overloading the mic. We may be getting a little bit crazy. And that's kind of disappointing. But because we're still figuring out what the setting should be and how I should be talking and stuff like that. But I'm serious. What I'm saying is serious. What I'm saying is very serious. And it's true. For doing these kind of things, you want a loud, clear voice. And fortunately, I have that. I think it's just, it's true. It shows up better on a mic. If you have a soft voice, it's different though. I mean, it's a different vibe, but I think for the most part, it just won't come through as well. Just because of the competing things I talked about, where it's, you're competing against background noise, unless you're in a treated room. Generally speaking, though, I guess if you showed up to a podcast, it wouldn't matter, would it? Because then it would be treated. So yeah, maybe I'm getting ahead of maybe I'm giving myself too much credit. But I think you get what my point is. There's certain enunciation or trends that are pretty important to keep in mind. And I think it's all important stuff. It's just, I don't know, the way my voice is. I've been told by a lot of people my whole life that I should do something with speaking, and it just didn't dawn on me until now, or I just didn't have a structure to it. I tried to do certain things, but I think that's been the good thing about working, is it really has ended up making me go like, oh yeah, I have this thing I got to do every day. Well, this guy really did not need to do this. Like, he backed out, but he just could have waited. I don't know why he had to do that. Because he hesitated and then he went for it, but it was really, I don't know. Obviously I'm not going to do anything because I'm chill, I'm schla, but did we really need to be doing that? But yeah, I think that is a good, I never really thought about it before, because I talk to people, I do stuff, but I'm not thinking about how the type of voice, it actually matters a lot. It's a gift. It's something that isn't a given. If I could have a horrible sounding voice. Maybe a strange voice would kind of help me, possibly. But imagine if I was exactly the same person, but my voice just sounded bad. Well, I guess it could sound bad, but I don't really get that a lot, so I'm just going to assume that isn't true. I just get loud. But again, assume I'm the same person, but I just don't have, like, my voice just doesn't sound good. It's too high pitched, or it's too low pitched, or something. I feel like my voice, it's a very happy medium. That is how I would describe it. I don't think my voice is all that deep. I don't really think it is high pitched. I could be wrong. I mean, maybe it's deeper than I think, but I'm just thinking about it, and that's just what I'm thinking. I think it's a happy medium. I think it's just clear. It's good. It's kind of what you would want. And maybe the uniqueness is not in the tone. It is more in my style, perhaps my delivery. I'm trying to think of the different ways it could be the case, but it's so true. I mean, my life could be ruined if I was exactly the same person, but I had a voice that people couldn't stand. Now, some people, maybe they can't stand my voice. I've had enemies. That's definitely the case.